Very nice question. I'll take a couple of questions. How to generate randint without using library? Beautiful question, Rishikesh. I loved it. Okay, so this is a topic of how do you generate random numbers in the beginning. Okay, that's a huge area of research. There are multiple strategies, right? So generating random numbers itself. So there is this book. There is a series of books by Donald Knuth, who is a Turing Prize winner, phenomenal computer scientist, and he has written a series of books about algorithms and data structures. I think in the second part of his book, he talks about random number generation, how to generate. Actually, technically it's called pseudo random number generators, because these are not actually random. So there are various strategies. So you can just go to the Wikipedia article on pseudo random number generators, and most modern computers today use some hardware hacks to generate these. Most modern computers, there are also software hacks, but most libraries, most random number generator functions typically use operating system functionality and some hardware to generate it. Generating random numbers is a huge challenge in general. It's not that easy, right? But that is like a whole one day long session on pseudo random number generation. Probably we'll do it sometime. But that's a very, I'm happy you asked that question. So please, I'll just give you pointers. Please Google search for pseudo random number generation. I'm sure there's a huge Wikipedia article. Check it out. It's a fun topic. I remember studying this in my graduate days, but I didn't use it beyond that. So I'll also answer this. Vishwa has a very nice question, which is, because of p-hacking, the whole hypothesis test is seen as unreliable in research circles. Very nice. Is there any benefit from learning a hard concept while it's not very relevant? Very good question, Vishwa. Okay, let me just show you something. Okay, so while some people in some areas might say it's not relevant, I'll have to look it up. I think I can find it. Just give me a second. Uber A/B testing platform. Again, I'm just Google searching along with you to show you. Okay, so this is how Uber built their experimentation platform. This is from 2018, right? So classic A/B testing, blah, 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 all that stuff. Okay, so let me just take you to this. Again, if you just Google search for this, Uber also has a very, very nice engineering blog. So this blog is called Under the Hood of Uber's Experimentation Platform. This is what Uber uses for a lot of experiments, by the way. Okay, in this, they have a chart which says what all tests do they use extensively. Okay, so in this chart, you'll see a lot. Again, their cases are very specific. So look at some of the tests that they're using. Okay, these are actual tests used by them on their platform. They use the t-test for simple cases. They use the Mann-Whitney U-test. This is the Mann-Whitney U-test that I talked to you about, right? Then there are also other variations of t-tests called the Welch test, Bootstrap test, etc. They also use the chi-square test. So the point that I wanted to drive here is, while there is a lot of issues with p-hacking and the reliability of research papers that are using some of the hypothesis testing mechanisms, companies are still using them. These are like almost close to, let's say, I think they're worth $40-50 billion. So the p-value computation has to be done very, very carefully, very, very diligently. If we mess it up, you'll go through the completely wrong direction. So there are limitations to whole of hypothesis testing. I'll come to that. That's why in lot of, if you have read any research papers from COVID vaccination or drugs, they don't use p-values as extensively. P-values are much more dangerous when you have small data and when the conclusions of experiments are mission critical, like in healthcare. So people have gone into the world of confidence intervals more and more. Again, internet companies also use confidence intervals. I'm not saying they don't. But hypothesis testing still has a place, a very important place, that large companies still use it regularly, but it has to be done very, very carefully. The reason why p-hacking and all the other stuff happens is because people don't use hypothesis testing properly. It is still a very powerful tool, certainly not the only tool, but still a very powerful tool. And another example. So for data quality, this is a live session that I think I did maybe 3-4 weeks back. So we discussed about the data quality system that was built at Netflix, Uber, Amazon, etc. Two things. So in the data quality, they want to ensure that the data that they store is sensible. In the data quality system that's used at Netflix and also at Amazon, they have a they actually use actual hypothesis testing mechanism called as a conglomerate spin-off test, KS test. If time permits, we'll cover that in the afternoon session today, right? So the conglomerate spin-off test basically says, given two distributions, are they similar or not? Very, very powerful test. And it's actually used to make sure that the data that companies are storing is sensible or not. So while I agree with you that p-hacking and people have misused hypothesis testing left and right, but there is a ton of possibility that companies are still using. Again, most of my experience is from the internet companies, but I also read good amount of medical research. I started reading because of COVID, and I've seen in medical research more and more they're not using they're not using hypothesis testing because people have messed it up. And unfortunately, some of the researchers don't understand the statistics internals. But the hardcore data guys still are using hypothesis testing as one of the tools, not the only tool. That's a very nice question from Vishwa. Cool. Just a second. I'm just trying to answer the top questions. Sorry. So again, Vishwanath, you're right. So you're completely right. So your argument here is, why are you changing the sample size after doing the whole experiment? I completely agree. That should not be done, but I'm doing it as a learning tool. I want you to explore and understand what happens if the sample sizes change. Let me give you an example, right? Imagine a real world scenario, right? I have small sample sizes, 20 people, 30 people sample sizes, and I'm doing some experiment and I get a p-value. Okay. And I reject the alternative hypothesis. Then the researcher, the medical drug company or the vaccine company like Pfizer can come and say, hey, your sample sizes are too small. That's true. I only have 20, 30 people. They say, hey, we have data from, let's say, 1,000 people in so and so country. Do you want to do your test with that? Why not? More data never hurts, right? So changing, one of the things that some of these sample size issues is, it also guides us on saying, hey, are my sample sizes too small? If they're small, is there a value in collecting more data to come up with statistically valid solutions? The p-hacking problem is when people try to fit their data or take only that data that fits their narrative. That is dangerous. In any scientific experiment, you have to be extremely careful not to have a bias. If you have a bias that this experiment should succeed, you will find data. You can make data tell any story you want. Okay, so that's why government regulators like the Food and Drug Administration, ICMR, the World Health Organization, they take the raw data provided by these vaccine companies and drug companies, they validate it, they run it through their statistical tests, and they are unbiased, so as to make sure that these drugs and vaccines are actually safe, right? Because if I am the guy who's designing the drug and also doing the hypothesis testing, I can always be biased, right? I mean, it's human nature. They may not be greedy. They might just be like, I put in thousands of hours of effort. It's all going down the drain, right? So we have to be careful on that.